but I wanted to welcome you to the webinar, Optimizing Contingent Labor and the Benefits of a Master Vendor Program. Before we start, I just wanted to share, if you have any questions today, I'm going to have a section at the end, some time left over. Please put any questions you have during the presentation into the chat. Austin Gray, who's hosting the call with me today, is going to read those off, then I'll try to respond to those real time at the end. In addition, you are going to receive a recording as well as a document following this webinar with the presentation. So feel free to sit back, listen. It's going to be an educational webinar. I do have an overview slide of myself as well as our companies, just to give you a background of who we are, and we're going to get right into the presentation. So with no further ado, let's get started. I also want to note this is part 2. Many of you have current MSP programs in place today. And back in December, we did master vendor, managed service supplier, or both. And that was recorded in December, how to integrate also an MVP within your master vendor or master service program. So if you want that recording and you have an MSP in place, just message me at the end and we can make sure we get you recording of that, as well as the document that was shared, as this is kind of a spin-off part 2 of the original first webinar that we hosted. Again, I just want to welcome you here today. My name is Derrick Ryskamp. I'm Director of Enterprise Sales here at Acara Solutions, an Acara Group company. I work with a lot of indirect procurement and TA leaders across the U.S. as a strategic advisor, building and customizing large contingent labor programs. And so, the goal today is to kind of talk about industry experience, what we're seeing in the marketplace, how master vendor programs can be utilized to modify, customize, and improve the efficiency of hiring within your contingent labor programs today. I've implemented MVP solutions for customers ranging from as small as $500,000 to $1 million up to $40 million. Been in the business and recruiting staffing business for over 20 years. And ultimately, my goal and our goal in supporting master vendor programs is helping our clients achieve cost savings as well as process efficiencies by implementing these recruitment delivery models. So let me give you a background real quick on our company. Acara is a total workforce solutions company based out of Buffalo, New York. We hold 6 brands within our organization. Acara Solutions, we're representing today, manages our master vendor programs. And if you just think traditional contingent labor, contract staffing, direct placement, employer of record. Broadleaf is our sister company. They're an MSP, woman-owned business. They also manage RPO and then SOW and everything else that would come with the management of a traditional MSP program. Talent Rise is our executive search division with executive coaching and leadership training as well. Loom is our IT outsourced services, so think fractional CIO, desktop support. Viaduct is a mirror of Acara, but it's focused primarily on the startup industry. And so as companies are launching their companies, Viaduct is supporting them in the contingent labor and direct hire space. And then we also have our Acara India location, so supporting clients in India as well as worldwide with contingent searches. Let's get right into it. I wanted to kind of share with everyone what has been gathered. So when you originally signed up for the conference, we asked a series of a couple questions. The reason we wanted to kind of ask those questions, we want to pull them together and kind of show the audience today the backgrounds of the companies that are joining the call. We know that there is a variety of different models that are in place to support your contingent labor programs. And we thought, regardless of the size of the spend of your company's program today, it'd be beneficial to see those who are currently looking to optimize your contingent labor, regardless if you have a very mature program or a smaller program in place today. So those that registered, 26 currently have an MSP program or managed service program today. 17 are managed internally. 13 have preferred suppliers. 12 have other methods of support. And then 2 currently have a master vendor program in place. Size of the companies that are registered today and are listening, 5 ranging from 1 to 500 employees, 23 ranging from 500 to 5,000, 11 companies 5,000 to 10,000 employees, and 31 10,000 employees on up. Annual contingent spend, as you can see, this is across the board as well. 11 ranging from 500,000 to $1 million, 20 ranging from 1 million to 5 million, 11 ranging from 5 million to 10 million, and 28 with 10 million plus in annual contingent labor spend. So what is a master vendor program? We wanted to kind of give an overview before we kind of dig into how to build a master vendor program, how to select right vendors. And so we kind of, we'll start here and we'll kind of get more granular as we go through the presentation today. Many of you have probably heard of a prime preferred vendor program that is also a master vendor program. So there are similar models that can be associated with master vendor. Many of you may not have heard of a master vendor. We call it a master vendor, but historically some have used this term as prime or preferred vendor programs. This is used to source and manage temporary workers. And rather than adhering to contract terms with numerous staffing suppliers, organizations will maintain a single point of contact for all contingent labor. And account teams will coordinate and manage the contingent labor workers from sourcing to onboarding, invoicing, performance management, offboarding. We're really looking at centralizing all contingent labor under a single provider. Some of the benefits, we'll go through those, but one of the unique benefits of a master vendor program are the ability for hiring managers to work directly with the recruiting firm that is fulfilling the jobs. Sometimes in large MSP programs or other programs where there's multiple layers, you have a MSP, you have a VMS, you have TA, and then you have the hiring managers. Sometimes there's not the ability to get access to the hiring manager and get direct feedback, which also does speed up the hiring process. This allows the master vendor to customize a process to engage with the hiring manager while keeping the TA and other teams informed of the status of current job openings and allows things to move in a streamlined manner. The data and analysis that is also collected with a single supplier, we'll dig into that a little bit later, but this is the #1 most requested data point right now is we don't know anything about our contingent workforce. We would like to be able to manage that, look at analysis, trends, and unless you have a VMS in place today, most organizations have this spread out across, 1 or 2 or 3 dozen suppliers and really can't get the reporting that they need real time to send to upper management as they're planning or preparing for new hiring spikes. It's very difficult to try put this all together without a central program in place. And so a master vendor program can do that. Also, there are second tier staffing vendors that are part of a master vendor program. Historically, in a really well performing master vendor program, the master vendor will fulfill between 85 and 95% of the open positions, and between 5 and 15% of the positions will then go to a tier 2. Sometimes it's allocated within that program. Certain positions will stay with a certain supplier, but in terms of centralizing, one contract flow down from the MVP to the tier 2, and you remain a single point of contact with the master vendor program to alleviate, reach outs from multiple suppliers. It will go through the master vendor moving forward. As we look at the distribution model, what can this look like? This is just an example of a model that can be rolled out within your organization. It can also be customized by specific location. So historically in a master vendor program, you as an organization will align with a master vendor on onboarding, recruitment processes. And as those requisitions come out, they will begin recruiting and try fulfill those roles and get those positions closed out. In the event that you have a certain amount of days that you want them to go to the tier 2, or if there was roles that historically the MVP did not have success filling, or they wanted to utilize a specific vendor for that reason, you can then have gates where those are released to the tier 2 vendor base and support. So this is just showing one example. And again, this could be by specific location, or it could be company wide. For those of you who have an MSP in place today, as I mentioned in the beginning of the call, we had a webinar hosted in December. It was a MSP, MVP, or both, and how to integrate an MVP. We did show distribution models of how with your MSP you can integrate an MVP by specific location to align them based upon specific hiring ramps, key skill sets, capabilities of a firm. And if that is you and you would like that slide, feel free to reach out to me following. But this is just kind of a quick snapshot of how typical MVP programs are structured. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll get to these here shortly at the end. What is traditional staffing versus MVP? I kind of broke this out here to kind of give you an example of the benefits of one versus the other. So in a traditional staffing model, you have staffing services performed by many different vendors. There's multiple contacts reaching out to you on behalf of their organization, reaching out to hiring managers. Sometimes hiring managers can get overwhelmed with the amount of vendors that are supporting requisitions, and it gets very difficult to track the status where you're at with the searches, if you're getting the right feedback and with the right candidates. And your company then owns the delivery, oversight, and management of all of those vendors, which can be pretty burdensome. You also have various billing cycles and manual billing. Some of those may not be able to work with the process you have in place today, so you may have to do customize reconciliation as far as invoices. As I mentioned before, minimum visibility into the workforce metrics. And then you also don't have lack of economies of scale pricing, meaning if you have 10 or 15 vendors supporting your contingent labor today, it's hard to negotiate pricing when you are one of several. Just imagine if there was 20 vendors in your program, the opportunity for a vendor to fill that role is a 5% chance. And so for them to have a 5% chance to negotiate lower rates, they're probably not going to want to flex too much. But if you're one of two, one of three, one of one, the opportunity for you to get more flexible on those rates continually goes up as the percentage of opportunity to fill continues to increase. We also see a lot of rogue spend and vendor favoritism within the traditional model. Y'all may have experience in the past. All of a sudden, an SOW comes across your desk for said contractor for a certain project, and you wonder, who is this and what is this for? And a hiring manager has identified a supplier to do a project for them. And it's a time and material project, really contingent labor with a bow. And how does that, managers sometimes will go around your certain process that you have in place to identify a vendor that they may like or a contractor. And so those are things you have to manage in a traditional model. And so as we flip over to an MVP and we try centralize it, we try make it more streamlined and take some of this work and effort and organization off your plate. One of the things that you look at, obviously, is a single vendor with a network and a single point of contact. There also is a single MSA to support, and so all terms and conditions are easily visible to all the senior leaders in the organization. There's no side agreements, markups that are unknown, no time and material that just comes through as an SOW. Everything is centralized. Even the tier 2 vendors, as we shared before, the tier 2 vendors will then receive an agreement from the master vendor, basically flowing down terms, provisions, as well as pricing. So they can leverage the pricing that is in place for those that want to participate as a tier 2. Also, the benefits of consolidated invoicing on one billing cycle, and then also utilizing a single employer of record for payroll services. Some of you may be utilizing multiple companies for payroll services. This would allow it to be centralized into one where there's a specific process and background checks, onboarding, all is consistent. And this allows you to ensure that nothing is missed when a candidate is prepared to start. You also have the benefit of performance reporting, not only with candidates who are on site, contractors who are on site performing the work, but also where we are at with fulfillment ratios, statistics regarding the overall job openings, and then data to support future hiring ramps. You also have the benefits of economies of scale pricing to generate cost savings when you consolidate under a single vendor. The rates that you're going to get from markup, direct placement, payroll are going to be much more aggressive than if you were to have a contract out with 15 or 20 different suppliers. Moving along to the 5 key benefits of a master vendor program. These are outlined. We're going to go through and break them down in detail in the following slides. But the first one is scalability. Second one is cost savings, single point of contact, one consolidated invoice, and then greater transparency. When we get down to greater transparency, I think this is probably the most asked for benefit. Better recruiting metrics and asking and being able to have the visibility to build up your dedicated recruiting team, which is the master vendor, to know the ebbs and flows of your business and how to grow and prepare for that in advance versus just it being ad hoc. So let's go into the first one, scalability. And scalability, some of the things that we look at here as you put together this program is we want to align the master vendor to your organization's workforce objectives. There may be certain seasonal hiring peaks, and you want to let the master vendor know that. There are times when you know that there's been difficulty filling certain positions, and so you're going to need a specific recruitment program based upon that. You're also going to need to look at, job fairs and specific hiring pitches on site where, this master vendor can work hand in hand with you to white glove and create a custom program and basically act as your extended recruiting arm, recruiting team. The ebbs and flows, master vendor can continually add or reduce support on their end. And typically on the support side, many of these recruiters are filling the jobs over and over again. They're a dedicated support team. They get to learn your hiring managers. They understand how to sell your organization. And they really can streamline not only onboarding, but they can also help with retention when it comes to pitching the culture, making sure we have the right fit up front, and those sort of benefits. When you have upticks in staffing requirements, being able to flex up and down, and then have the organization immediately know what you need versus having to go explain it to 5, 10, 15 different firms and get on calls with each one of them what you're looking for. An MVP can also provide skill testing and onboarding procedures, including drug and background screening. Typically, These are all items that we include in a master vendor program. When you're talking about taking things off of your plate and making your process a little bit easier and more streamlined, we can help with all those items. Move on to the next slides, cost savings. When you're talking cost savings for master vendor, we're looking at all contingent labor spend. And so when you do that, typically you're identifying vendors and spend that's currently outside of your preview. Master vendor, before they implement any type of program, would typically want to collect and look at where the spend is at today, help give you a snapshot if it's with 10 or 15 different suppliers, doing an RFI to help centralize and gather that information, and then moving forward, put new programs in place to notify managers, new process, and here's the rates that we're going to use moving forward. When you look at the centralizing the contingent labor, obviously the high volume of spend will cause immediate reduction in cost and spend, and you typically can get the largest savings at the beginning. So a lot of master vendor programs, when they're transitioning that headcount at the beginning, will take all suppliers, make notifications. Typically, staffing association guidelines is 30-day notice to any existing suppliers in the program that the company's going to be making a change and centralizing to a single vendor. And communications are typically sent out to the staffing agency as well as the contractors, giving them the opportunity to work under a new assignment with a new master vendor in place. We've seen organizations save 30, 40, 50% transitioning their existing headcount under 40, 50, 60% markup rates down to a low payroll rate and save millions of dollars. This is typically, when you're talking master vendor, this is typically the biggest area of savings right out of the gate is you're going to get when you consolidate all vendors under a single supplier. Now, if there's tier twos that are going to remain in the program, obviously they would keep their headcount. But when we're talking about reducing vendors that are no longer going to support the program moving forward, you typically want to transition those suppliers over to a master vendor, whoever you select, and allow them to be managed. In addition to that, once the employees are under a master vendor, now you'll have the ability to centralize the data, the reporting, the metrics, because now it's all in a central database. Move on to the next one. Benefits of a single point of contact. We all know your day is very busy and full already. Most of you will have, if you're on the TA side, will have your own requisitions or HR side to fill in addition to managing contingent labor. One of the benefits of an MVP will be to help manage that, not only the vendor interactions, but the hiring manager interactions. Each hiring manager can have its own specific preferences as far as how they like to do intake calls, how they like candidates to be sent over to them, how interviews are to be set up. It can be customized to each hiring manager, or it can be centralized with a VMS. So it completely depends. Some organizations don't have enough spend to justify the cost of the VMS, and that's okay. A master vendor can manage that on your behalf. But if you do have a VMS today, an MVP can manage the VMS for you as well. When it comes down to any instances as far as issues, escalations, changes of program and process, having a single point of contact makes it very easy and allows the master vendor to then communicate out to the tier 2 support base moving forward. Also, depending on the type of program, if you have a high volume of positions at certain sites, the master vendor can put an on-site support team, whether it's program or recruiters, to get on site and embed with your team and hiring managers, as well as help with consultant care. and contractor engagement to help improve retention throughout the organization. We typically want to make sure that these folks know that we can be the first line for any questions that they have versus having to go to a hiring manager and then having it come back through and around to us. And so when you look at a master vendor, the single point of contact, this can be a very great benefit and take a lot of work off your plate, adding time back to you and your schedule to focus on some of the other objectives you have in your organization. The next is consolidate invoice. This is pretty simple. You know, receiving dozens of invoices with time cards and approvals and or any errors on them is very difficult to go back and forth and manage. This sometimes falls on the TA or HR teams or even procurement, and many times it gets pushed back to accounts payable, accounts receivable. And so this allows not only for you to have a central point of contact, but also your AP teams to have a single invoice. We can customize it. They can be customized to how you want this to be received front before any billing takes place, and then allows the AP team on your end to be able to have one-on-one dialogue, any tweaks and changes to be easily accessible. And then also, you don't have to pay each individual vendor, saving time and resources on your end. So again, not a lot to cover on this one, but when you think about it, as your organization, you're trying to improve and optimize time across all divisions and departments, this can definitely help with your finance team and give them some more time back to focus on other initiatives. The next section and last one here is transparency. As we shared, more and more companies are wanting better recruiting metrics, more consistent candidates due to dedicated recruiting teams. As you put together and build out an MVP program, all the metrics will run through the single provider, which will allow them to have this data tracked and performance measured in real time. Transparency will enable your organization to operate more effectively. If your C-level team or line managers need immediate reports, these can be made available very quickly, or ad hoc consistent reporting can be made on a regular ongoing basis. When you look at process efficiency and visibility into candidate flow, hiring, fill ratios, many times if there's a VMS, you can pull a lot of these reports. Many organizations, and there was quite a few on this call, where spend is typically less than 10 million. You may not have a VMS in place today and don't have access to these types of reports. This transparency, as you consolidate with a single vendor, will definitely give you more outlook in strategy and planning with the recruiting company fulfilling their requisitions today. And so I think this is probably the most asked for and biggest benefit that companies are seeing today, next to cost savings, is the transparency. And today, companies need to move fast. They change very rapidly. And this allows the recruiting organization to move quickly with you. How is success measured? These are just some standard KPIs that we manage for MVP customers today, but they can be customized with any vendor that you're utilizing. Typically, client request under 4 hours, a response to new requisition comes in, email or phone calls made out, and then we get a team assigned to that immediately. Typically like to see this under 4 hours. Submission to new roles, typically 1 to 3 days, depending on how technical the role is. If it's light industrial, some of those can happen within the business day to the first 24 hours. The more technical the role is, the more niche the skill set, the longer it could be to screen qualified candidates and get those submitted over. So typically a good success ratio to measure is 1 to 3 days for submittals. Candidate start time, typically 7 to 4 days, depending on how many onboarding and background screenings need to take place. Many times the biggest delay is the contractor. Getting in, getting their paperwork started, getting the drug screen and background check paperwork completed so that can be run. During COVID, we saw quite a few delays in background checks. Most of those have been fixed since now, but typically once the paperwork's been done, and depending on how many counties somebody has lived in, we all know that can add a few more days, but typically 7 to 14 days is a good range for start time. Early termination rate, another word for this is attrition. Companies in a manufacturing setting have seen a higher level of attrition over the past few years as candidates are looking to move for 50-cent raise, dollar raise, and working for your competitors across the street. We typically like to see termination rates below 25% in a successful program. If there's higher termination or attrition rates, work with a master vendor to figure out, what can be done, why are people leaving, doing exit surveys, getting that feedback, and then really looking at what do we need to do from a comp standpoint, analysis, from feedback if there's hiring manager issues, and then working with them to go talk to all the other contractors on site and try to alleviate that. So keeping it under 25% is a typical target for a large master vendor program. And reporting frequency, I'm going to hit this in another slide, but daily to annually, depending on how often you would like reporting, this can be customized to your organization. As we jump into reporting, there's a variety of different reports that can be provided when you centralize all of your spend. Historically, the highest requested reports in contingent labor are everything from tenure, how long has this person been on assignment, to how long are they staying on assignment. Everything from terminations, when was this person termed so we can close them out in our system. Is this person past the guarantee period for conversions? And looking at that in real time. Spend, what is the spend today for all contingent laborers, contractors, or specific individuals? You can get hours reports, how many placements and hires have been made, and then completion, how many have completed their initial assignment, and then specific custom ad hoc reporting. So reports, as you work with a master vendor, whoever you choose to implement one, should be able to have access to customizing reports for you, bar charts, pie charts, graphs, typical Excel spreadsheets that can clearly define and outline headcount existing as well as historical spend and data, not only doing QBRs, but annual reports looking into the next year so that you can better strategize and plan for future hiring initiatives. Our last slide here, how to select an MVP vendor. Many of you may go to RFP for traditional staffing services. Some of you may have been working with suppliers for a long time. Typically, I would say the best thing to do is look internally first and see if there is a master vendor that could be created out of one of your top performing suppliers today. Sometimes companies have more bandwidth and capability than you realize. They may have a larger organization and recruiting team on a national scope. When you look at selecting a master vendor, you're going to want to look at a couple things. Number one, performance and capabilities. Have you supported these types of roles in the past? What is your capabilities to support if you have multiple locations? What is your recruiter bandwidth today? How many recruiters do you have? How many jobs can you support at a single time? And then also, do you have the ability to give us the reports and analytics that we need to support the business? When you look at the industry that you're in and the supplier that you're working with, do they have the relevant history and industry experience filling those types of jobs? That is critical. You don't want to look at going to a master vendor with a company that's never done it before. If they've never managed large scale programs, you don't want to be there first. But they could be, if they're a top performing supplier, they could be a great vendor to support as a tier 2. But you don't want them to be the first. When you look at the evaluation of current vendors, as I mentioned, one of the things to just think about is, these staffing organizations want as much business as they can. And many organizations will say, absolutely, we can do it. We can fill all these roles. But you got to really dig into the details. And so some of the things that we outlined here that are important to you, make sure that you take that into consideration when you're preparing questions, you're doing evaluation. Who would be my single point of contact? I have somebody on site? Looking at cost and cost savings, how aggressive can we get on the pricing? And is it also profitable enough for them to support the business? What types of reports can you give me access to? How big are your recruiting team? And can they scale up? Can you add recruiters if we need to? We've met with many organizations that have gone from 20 recruiters to 400 in a couple months. And having the ability to scale your recruiting team and flex with that, and then flex down, that's really critical to know. Also ask about other cost savings and efficient recruitment strategies that they have. Maybe there's volume discounts. Maybe there's certain opportunities you can look at doing a different approach on the markups or fees. And so looking at that in a holistic standpoint is very important. Looking at your recruitment strategies, kind of outlining, hey, here's our process today. Where do you think we can improve? Or maybe sharing, hey, here's our bottlenecks. What are the solutions that you would give us to outline how we can change this and make it easier to move forward with and get candidates started even quicker. And as I mentioned, experience managing these large programs. It is very difficult to just become a master vendor if they're trying to do it for the first time. But if somebody's managed this at 1 or 2 or 3 different clients in the past, and maybe they're not very big and your spend isn't very large, it could be a great opportunity to have them grow into it and build out a really nice program. The biggest thing that you're looking at as a master vendor is you really want to get as close to the company filling the requisitions as possible. The collaborative approach, the ability to communicate with them on a regular basis versus having layers of, hey, just everything goes to the VMS, don't talk to us, send candidates here. That's kind of the old. Managers and clients are wanting to have more visibility into hiring decisions and talk with those who are filling the roles. And so this allows for that. Recently, in the last 4 months, we had a client that went to bid. They thought they were looking for an MSP with a VMS. Upon further discussion with them, issues, reasoning that they were going to bid, it was evident that they really wanted a custom tailored and white glove approach. They wanted a collaborative partnership with a recruiting vendor, and we ended up helping them implement the VMS, but we implemented the MVP model. And post implementation, they said this is exactly the approach that they wanted. The hands-on strategy, the collaboration was really what they wanted. And so, I think as you look at overall this presentation and the opportunities to align a master vendor, it may not be right for your organization. Currently, what you have in place today could be perfectly fitted for your needs, but this isn't a right solution for everyone. If you have an MSP today, the MSP could be the best solution. You may have international locations, you may have high volume across tons of locations and sites, you may have specific niche skill sets, and that's okay too. And as I mentioned, you could look at, for certain locations, maybe implementing an MVP at certain sites that could help optimize hiring and improve efficiencies at certain locations. So you could, can consider that. As I wrap up here, I wanted to, leave some time open for some questions. I know we're getting close to the 45 minutes that we had set aside. But again, wanted to just remind everyone before I end with the questions that there is going to be a recording link shared, as well as the deck following this. Austin, can you read me some of the questions that we have in the chat, and I can quickly try to answer some of those?
Sure can. So the first question we have is from Eric. How does Acara provide contract services in Mexico locations? Are there minimum term limits there?
All right, well, thank you, Eric, for that. Being a direct question for Acara, I'll kind of side table that, but I will say that Mexico specifically has recently passed legislation not allowing contingent labor in Mexico. There are some laws. I can send links to those if you want to message me following. Mexico is trying to align more and more contractors under the direct employer. And there's various rare cases where they're allowing SOWs moving forward with the changes in legislation in the last couple of months. So if you want to message me, I can send that link to you for Mexico specifically.
Excellent. Next question is also from Eric. What is the typical handling cost of the MVP versus traditional staffing?
So there is no management cost for an MVP. Typically, because all the spend is consolidated, the benefit you have in that program is they're getting, 100% of fulfillment, as I mentioned, 80, 85, 90% fulfillment typically by the master vendor, and then some by tier 2. There's no fees, and you shouldn't be charged an MSP or management fee from an MVP. And sometimes if you have VMS, there's obviously a cost to that. You can do that supplier funded, or it can be funded internally, but there's no fee associated with a master vendor program.
Thanks, Derrick. Next question is from Katrina. What is the difference between an MSP versus an MVP?
A great question. So in a traditional MSP, you have an organization that does not do recruiting. They manage staffing suppliers. And so many of you have an MSP program in place today. Historically, those organizations do not have recruitment teams. They manage a group of vendors that are in that program. They manage the VMS, they manage SOW type services, and they push those requisitions to the vendors. Versus in an MVP model, the MVP is the recruitment organization. They are filling the jobs, and if there is something that needs to be pushed to tier 2, they will do that. But in all reality, they are your main recruitment partner.
Okay, next question is from Matt. When you look at customers that execute their staffing programs well, is there any consistency around where ownership of the programs lies within their organization? If not, are there characteristics of an organization that seem to be more successful than others?
Yeah, great question. I think we're seeing a big trend where a lot of organizations are having contingent labor move to procurement. And so I'd say over the last couple of years, the majority of our conversations begin on the procurement side or indirect procurement, and then come over to the TA side. And I think programs that we've seen are the most effectively run. They want to get, the managers and companies want to get as close to the recruiting as possible. The data, the metrics are very important. Managing cost is typically going to be the biggest initiative for implementing MVP, and that's typically driven on the procurement side. So some of those things are curtailed by, change in hiring plans, specific hiring ramps, maybe just not being satisfied with the vendors that they have in place today. And then also, the need to find cost savings. And so those are all reasons that companies are looking to make changes, but also I think the biggest one is having access to that data through a single point of contact.
Great. And we're just going to jump back because Katrina had a follow-up to her MSP versus MVP question. Can a provider be both an MSP and MVP?
Yes. Well, there are organizations that do have an MSP program where they do have a recruiting arm, so they can do that. When you're talking master vendor and you have tier 2, and you have a VMS, you're somewhat operating as an MSP in some senses because you're managing some of those aspects. Many organizations, when you look at what an MSP really can do, when you look at 1099 validation, statement of work, not a lot of master vendors will manage all that spend outside of the program as well. That's technically contingent labor. So sometimes there's a difference between the two. But you could have a company that's an MSP with their own in-house recruiting teams that could support this as well. But typically, they're two different programs that are run.
Great. Then our next question is going to be, what are the top 3 VMS to support MVP?
It's a good question. I can send out, if you want to message me on that, there's quite a few VMS programs out there. Our sister company, Broadleaf, has partnerships with many of those, and we've done some analysis on the VMSs and how they integrate best. And we can provide additional information if you would like to message me on that as well.
Thank you. And then our next question is there any ATS that you do not integrate with?
It depends on what a company has in place today. Most organizations should be able to integrate with their IT departments to either pull requisitions or get access to the ATS. Depends on the process that a company wants to put in place today. If you want candidates going into your database, if you want them staying with your master vendor, whoever is selected, they can be housed internally or externally. So it really just depends on the structure and layout of what works best for your organization and how you would partner with the recruiting agency for that.
Excellent. I think that is our final question.
All right. Well, thank you, Austin. Thank you, everybody, for joining again. We're going to have the recording sent out in the next day or so, as well as the presentation deck. If there's any other additional questions, my email is listed here or in my phone number. Feel free to give me a call or ask any questions that I can answer for you. Again, we appreciate the opportunity to share the benefits of Master Vendor Program with you. Hopefully you learned something today. I hope that you have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend ahead. And thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful day.